The Boston Celtics dodged a major bullet at last year's trade deadline when they were looking to acquire Jakob Poeltl, but were luckily outbid by division rival Toronto Raptors as they now lost their lottery pick, and with the Celtics being able to acquire Kristaps, Porzingis, and Jrue and have this better outlook on the season, this could have not have happened if we traded for Jakob Poeltl. So we're going to be breaking down what GM Brad Stevens did, the masterclass from him last season to ultimately win Executive of the Year this year, and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz, but before we dive in on all of this Boston Celtics news, 65% of you guys who watch our channel are not subscribed, and we appreciate that you guys hit that subscribe button as we're pushing for 4,000 subscribers on Celtics Digest here by the end of the playoffs. Come join us. We're doing live watch-alongs. We missed one because I had a prior commitment. We'll be here for the rest of the playoffs doing these live watch-alongs. Guys, we'll have the live radio call-ins, daily uploads. So if that is something you guys enjoy, hit that subscribe button. Without further ado, though, let's dive into the topic at hand today. Make sure to grab a snack as it's going to be a jam-packed episode. And like I mentioned in the introduction, the Celtics got lucky, not just because of the luck of the Irish or possibly their mascot being named Lucky, but ultimately they were absolutely fantastically lucky by getting outbid by the Raptors last season. So we're going to look at an article from Brian T. Robb, who works for Mass Live here, kind of dives in, and we want to look at, this Reddit post that kind of detailed it first. The Raptors aggressively outbid the Boston Celtics and others for Jakob Poeltl last year at the trade deadline, and this move came back to haunt Toronto in major ways on Sunday during the draft lottery. We're going to take a closer look at the fallout and what it meant for the Boston Celtics. So looking at this article here, the Celtics were also in the market for trade help at last year's trade deadline and made an offer for a big man that was Jakob Poeltl, including a bunch of bench players and some draft picks. Ultimately, the Raptors outbid the Celtics by including the lottery-protected first-round pick, along with 2 other second-round picks and a salary filler in Kemba to facilitate the trade. Now, ultimately, when you look at this from a San Antonio Spurs point of view, this does make sense. Taking this Raptors draft pick that was highly protected in the lottery top 6 was a no-brainer for them. They knew that the Raptors weren't going to be that great and possibly could have lost Jakob Poeltl as him being a free agent, and getting 2 second-round picks plus a salary filler in Kemba you ultimately could waive or move off on from is huge. No long-term salary acquitted to you, multiple draft picks. In last year's draft class featuring Victor Wembanyama and them trading DeJounte Murray the year prior, it was a necessary move for the San Antonio Spurs. They thought it was the best direction forward, and it did. They got Victor Wembanyama. They got their new, culture piece to be brought in, and they're going to be set up for decades to come. Ultimately, in the lottery, also got the Raptors pick, having pick 4, having pick 8. If you guys missed that, check out Raptors Digest. Ben did a fantastic job breaking all that down. I know he wasn't the most hype about them losing the pick, but I think it will be all great for the Toronto Raptors and in the future. If we want to kind of look at this, article more in depth, obviously as at the time of the trade, it looked like the Raptors trade was an overpay already, as Jakob Poeltl was already on an expiring contract, and the Raptors were a mediocre team that lacked a reliable big man. He did help out on that front, but certainly didn't change the trajectory of the Raptors, as Toronto got upset in the play-in tournament by the Chicago Bulls and ultimately didn't even make the play-in or the playoffs. They did end up re-signing Jakob Poeltl on a 4-year, $78 million contract, but the 3 draft picks, especially a lottery-protected first, is a lot to pay up for a guy in Jakob Poeltl, especially when you look at what the Boston Celtics potentially would have given up. If you look on the flip side, the Celtics are obviously a better team without trading for Jakob Poeltl, having guys like Jrue and Kristaps Porzingis, but if they were able to do a deal for Jakob Poeltl, ultimately getting a deal for Kristaps Porzingis doesn't seem like it's going to happen or fall through fruition, as obviously they already had a defensive center, a rebounding center, one that I would have really liked for this team, but ultimately glad that they did not go in the direction. This article mentions that the Celtics would have traded some young players and draft picks, and one of those guys that would have been moved to San Antonio would have most likely been Payton Pritchard. Obviously, last year, if you're not familiar, he requested a trade kind of halfway through the season with the Celtics guard room being filled with Derrick White, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon, and him. He was at the bottom. He was at the end of the ladder. He felt that he was deserving of getting some playable minutes. And as we've seen throughout this season, he is damn well worth it. And he would have been a perfect fit alongside this Spurs team. Being that catch-and-shoot player, being that facilitator, being that playmaker, really setting up this offense, he would have been a perfect pick-and-roll partner alongside a guy in Victor Wembanyama and would have competed for that starting point guard alongside Trey Jones. Ultimately, if the Celtics did do that move for Poeltl and they still had Victor Wembanyama, Payton Pritchard would be having a heyday. Would be a starting point guard, in my opinion, alongside one of the most dominating and fun big men in the NBA who can basically do everything. Oh, he would have been set up. But luckily for the Boston Celtics, that did not happen. They were able to not trade for Jakob Poeltl. They got outbid by the Toronto Raptors, who lost their lottery pick for going for him. And the Celtics now have a contending team. Obviously, getting to keep Payton Pritchard, obviously getting to trade for Kristaps Porzingis, getting to trade for Jrue Holiday were huge things that this Boston Celtics team were to pay for. And now with teams like the Sixers and the Knicks having really good, well-built teams in this Atlantic division, the Raptors taking a little bit of a step back for doing this Jakob Poeltl trade. This is huge for the Boston Celtics in the Atlantic Division, as now they have one less team to really worry about in the Raptors alongside the Nets kind of being at the bottom there. And then obviously with the Sixers and the Nets being good, they only have two teams to really worry about contending, and they ultimately got a better roster by adding Kristaps Porzingis. Now, one thing I do want to note from looking at this Reddit post is there are a lot of fans that get mad when the Celtics do go to trade deadline and do not take a swing. But like Colonial Revival said, a little louder for the Doomers in the back who complain when we don't make a big splashy deadline move, because I am in your boat. I'm not going to lie to you. At the trade deadline last year, I definitely would have liked Jakob Poeltl. Having another rebounding center, having another guy would have been solid. But the fact that he was on a expiring deal, for the fact that there was no certainty that he would have been brought back for the Celtics, I am glad that they did not move that deal. And they were able to acquire a guy in Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday. Even though Kristaps has been injury prone for the Celtics this year, we've seen him be a fantastic defensive presence in the paint, being really that replacement for Robert Williams as a shot blocker and rim protector, but also the efficiency of being that fantastic scorer as well, down low in the post, on the block, in the mid-range, at the three-point line versus the Heat, versus the Cavs. He's really been a solid contributor for this team. And Jrue Holiday, once again, having a fantastic Game 3 after some lackluster games previously, but all in all, doing everything he needs to do, all the intangibles, the assists, the rebounds, and I realistically think that this was the best move for the Celtics, going after guys in Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, instead of settling for a guy in Jakob Poeltl in the trade deadline last season. Let me know what you guys think down below. Would you guys like to see the Jakob Poeltl trade, or do you guys think we made the smart decision with Brad Stevens, waiting it out to the offseason, kind of seeing how the cookie crumbles in the playoffs, and then making our moves, bringing in Jrue Holiday and bringing Kristaps Porzingis? Once again, I'm on Brad Stevens' side. Let's go, Brad. Keep riding that momentum. But as you guys know, before we head out, we have to get to the comment of the day. Drop down your thoughts down below. Here, as we know, I'm recording this video before Game 4, but you guys will see it the morning after. So ultimately, you guys will know the outcome of the series. I totally don't know it yet. The Celtics could go up 3-1, or they could be tied up 2-2. But this comment is from our guy BX, who is a huge contributor in the Celtics live streams, talking about their last performance, saying, don't forget that the 07-08 team played 26 out of 28 games in the playoffs, went 7 games in practically every series. I'm more concerned that JT is playing hurt. Jrue will be fine. They'll look at the tape and regroup as usual. This was following our Game 2 reaction, and BX, they did change those things. Jrue Holiday was that guy in Game 3. I ultimately didn't know if Tatum was hurt. He did look very solid in Game 3, and we're hoping to see guys like Jrue, guys like Jayson Tatum really step up for the Boston Celtics in Game 4 tonight. Once again, Jaylen Brown was absolutely efficient from the field. Derrick White didn't have the greatest game in Game 3. Would love to see Derrick White take that little transcendence. And again, from the bench, Horford's been solid on the defensive side. Pritchard and Hauser have been decent. Let's see them step up. Let's see them ball out. And again, I am confident. I think the Celtics are going to go up 3-1 following this game tonight. And let me know in the comment section. Did we win? Did we lose? Obviously, we'll have a post-game breaking it down before this video comes out. Obviously, this is coming out tomorrow morning. But let me know your guys' thoughts. Do you guys think it was a smart decision with Brad Stevens? Do you are in my camp? no Jakob Poeltl, waiting for Kristaps Porzingis, waiting for Jrue Holiday was the right move? Or do you think that possibly trading for Jakob Poeltl, keeping him, would have helped out the Boston Celtics in the defensive, in the rebound, and maybe not having that injury-prone-ish center? Let me know your thoughts down below. Like, again, once I mentioned, I appreciate all your support. Thank you guys for tuning in as we reach for 4,000 subscribers. If you're still at this point of the video, hit the subscribe button, as we'd greatly appreciate it. I'm Bruce Veliz, heading out for you guys on Celtics Dodged. Just have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics. Peace out, everybody.